So our next speaker is Peter Matjas. I hope I'm pronouncing your name okay, Peter. Peter is the president of the European Youth Forum. We're really honored to have him here as well.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm not just saying that, but it truly is, because it's actually only the second time in the history of the Youth Forum that we have a gay president, and I don't always get the chance to say that out loud. Not because I would need to, because I live in a privileged environment where this is fully accepted, but every now and then you actually have to stand up and say it as well. So it is really a great honor to be here and speak on behalf of the European Youth Forum, the platform of youth organizations working for the rights and needs of young people in Europe. I will structure my input on three basic things: share some personal thoughts, then introduce a little bit the structured dialogue that was mentioned, and a bit what we as youth organizations can or should do on LGBT rights as part of youth rights. So on the personal level, I started off with that, being gay myself, and I was truly inspired and reminded of my youth by Andy saying, I felt different all along. And I think everybody in this room can identify with that, whatever your sexual orientation might be, because we identify ourselves as being different for many different reasons. And all of us sitting here today are different just because of the fact that we are actually doing something about being pissed off by the things in society. And that also means being different. It took me a long time to understand that I was not just different because I was gay, I was also different because I took a stand and fought for things. And that takes courage, and for that you need organizations such as Belong To in Ireland, or LGBT in Slovenia or elsewhere, that help young gay men, women and transgender people to come out and do that. Some of us were fortunate enough that we went there and saw that that's not for us, and we went on a different route and became active in different organizations. And I think that's also very important, and that's kind of the mainstreaming I was talking about yesterday, that it's important that we have gay and lesbian and transgender people who are just doing their business and any other things, and they might happen to be of a specific sexual orientation, but they're not necessarily wearing a pink feather up their arse all the time, like I told my parents when I came out, that they don't need to worry, because that's important, but there's a limit that everybody understands and has to find their way. And I think that's something that I've learned to appreciate very much, that everybody knows when they can speak out and when they need to speak out. And there was a very important moment for me as president of the Youth Forum last year, a very frustrating moment, because we were in a Council of Europe conference. Council of Europe, the defender of human rights in Europe. And we were in Russia. We were in St. Petersburg. I just went to one of the biggest gay discos that I've ever been to, and the next day I was in a conference where, for the first time in the history, the ministers for youth could not agree on a text because Russians, Turks, Azeris and Armenians were blocking it based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And usually they make their reservations and they just continue the discussions and we still get an agreement, but because it was in Russia, it wasn't possible. So we had to stand up for our rights, and we allowed young people to wear Pussy Riot masks during my speech, my intervention in the minister conference. That was a very small thing that we did, but I was really impressed that there are people out there who are in positions of power, like the Flemish Minister for Education, who stood up and said that I'm gay and I feel uncomfortable among you, and stood up and spoke about these things. So I think it's very important for us to remind ourselves when that moment comes, and that even in the organizations that we tend to put our faith in, like the Council of Europe, there are challenges that we need to face daily. And that's why I'm so happy that being president of the Youth Forum, it gives me the opportunity to sometimes be the voice of the neglected. And I was very happy that in the structured dialogue, which is basically a tool that we have to engage young people in decision-making and policy-making at EU level, which means we go out with a specific topic for 18 months, this time it's social inclusion. We reach out through our members, through youth organizations at the most local level possible to get their opinions on different topics. And I was very happy that one of the main things that they themselves said in terms of social inclusion, that was mentioned by Minister Fitzgerald this morning, is that LGBT people are particularly affected by social exclusion. And that gave the Irish presidency an opportunity to pick this topic up and devote it this attention that it rightly deserves. And then the challenge that I posed the question to the minister earlier: how do we maintain this for the future? Well, one trick is that in the next phase of the structured dialogue, when the Lithuanian topic is the so-called needs, young people not in training, education, employment, we need to go back to all those young people who answered the first questionnaire to continue answering that LGBT people are part of needs. They are affected by not being able to find employment, and partly that's because of discrimination or not enough information about the different things, and that they are facing multiple discrimination because they are a young woman, a young lesbian, a young person, and that needs to be tackled. So I hope that with that, but going back to the process, we can actually empower ourselves to be able to use the policy tools afterwards, because we're going to give it still a chance in the next phase. So we're going to have it there. If we have it in a text, then we can pick it up. And even if some will try to ignore it, others will try to pick it up again. So that's an appeal on all of you to get more familiar with the structured dialogue process. The National Youth Council of Ireland is heavily involved in it, and others will help you in that process here locally. So make use of that and contribute, because we need your inputs on that. And then this brings me to what in the Youth Forum we are trying to do. And we are trying to always face our advocacy and underpin it with facts. So that's why we develop evidence-based policy, but also rights-based policy. We have a youth rights approach to things, and LGBT, and I'm missing here the Q the whole weekend already, because I was reminded by IGLYO, our member organizations, that queer is a very important part that should be included. I haven't seen it in this setting yet, so it's an important thing to consider. But LGBTQ topics are part of youth rights for us, because youth rights for us are not just the usual human rights that you already have, but there are some specificities for a specific group, like there are specific women rights. We believe there are specific LGBT rights, and we believe there are specific youth rights. The rights to education, the right to participation, the right to housing, the right to work are partially influenced by the fact if you are a young person. And I was super happy that the minister herself was mentioning that age is not just defined by a number, it's defined by the transition in which you are. And this is even more relevant when you talk about the topic of today, the LGBT youth and social inclusion. How do you ensure that transition that we are feeling is taken into account when we are facing these things? It's very important that we saw in the run-through of the data in terms of percentages where we are, but also we face the difficulty that on one hand we are telling people, you come out when you're ready. On the other hand, we are saying if people don't know, or we don't know if they are gay or not, how can we help them? So there's a challenge for us, defenders of LGBT rights as well. And that's something I just want to put out there to discuss later on when we come to the different sessions. And I welcome you to the session on LGBT and employment, where I will be again. So if you have more questions on that, feel free to ask. But my final 3 seconds are to encourage you to keep up doing the good work that you do and belong to, but also all the other stakeholders that are here, and make the structured dialogue a meaningful process, also for your issues here, and continue empowering young LGBTQ people in Ireland. Thank you.